Captain Lee Tae-min stared at the screen in front of him. The dead planet below looked like any other lifeless rock they had found in the past 3 years. But something was different about this one. His ship, the Perseverance, had picked up strange energy readings from the surface. "Captain, you need to see this," Dr. Park So-young called from her station. She was the ship's quantum physicist, and Lee trusted her judgment more than anyone else on the crew. Lee walked over to her workstation. The woman was small but brilliant. She had joined his crew 2 years ago, and her work had saved them more times than he could count. "What do you have, Doctor?" "These readings don't make sense," Park said, pointing at her screen. "There's technology down there. Old technology. Really old." Lee looked at the data. "How old are we talking?" "Maybe 1,000,000 years. Maybe more." Park's voice was quiet. "But that's not the strange part. The energy patterns I'm seeing, they shouldn't exist." Lee frowned. In his 20 years exploring space, he had seen many dead worlds. Most had ruins. Some had technology that was still working. But Park seemed worried about something else. "What kind of energy patterns?" he asked. Park took a deep breath. "The kind that break the laws of physics as we know them." Across the galaxy, on the council station, Counselor Vexithara was having a very bad day. The reptilian being had lived for over 300 years, and in all that time, the galaxy had been peaceful, stable, controlled. Now the humans were changing everything. Vexithara looked at the reports on his desk. 50 years ago, humans had barely learned to travel faster than light. They were new, small, and not very important. The council had given them permission to explore a small area of space, and everyone thought that would be enough to keep them busy for centuries. They were wrong. "Counselor," his assistant said, entering the room, "the human expansion report is ready." Vexithara opened the file and felt his stomach drop. In just 50 years, humans had explored more space than most species did in 500 years. They had built colonies on dozens of worlds. They had developed new technology at a speed that scared the older council members. But most troubling of all, they kept pushing against the quantum barrier. The quantum barrier was the invisible wall that kept all species in their assigned areas of space. It had been there for as long as anyone could remember. No one had ever broken through it. No one had ever tried very hard because everyone knew it was impossible. Everyone except the humans. Back on the Perseverance, Lee had decided to land on the planet. The ruins were located in what used to be a large city. The buildings were made of materials that Lee had never seen before. They seemed to glow with their own light even after being dead for so long. "Captain, over here," called Choi Min-ho, the ship's engineer. He was standing next to a large structure that looked like a tower. "This thing is still active." Lee and Park hurried over. The tower was about 50 feet tall and covered in symbols that seemed to move when they looked at them directly. "It's beautiful," Park whispered. She pulled out her scanner and started taking readings. "Captain, this is incredible. This technology is more advanced than anything in the galaxy. What does it do?" Lee asked. Park studied her scanner for several minutes. I think it's some kind of dimensional device. It's connected to the quantum barrier somehow." Lee felt a chill run down his spine. "Connected how?" "It's like the barrier isn't natural," Park said slowly. "It's artificial. Someone built it. Someone is controlling it. The idea was crazy. The quantum barrier had always been there. It was part of the universe itself. At least, that's what everyone believed." "Doctor, are you sure about this?" Lee asked. Park nodded. "The readings don't lie, Captain. This technology was used to study the barrier, maybe even to manipulate it." Meanwhile, Admiral Kim Dong-ho was sitting in his office on Earth, reading reports that made his head hurt. As the head of Earth's space fleet, he was responsible for protecting human colonies and exploration ships. Lately, that job had become much more complicated. The Galactic Council was getting nervous about human expansion. They had sent several messages asking Earth to slow down their exploration efforts. Some council members had even suggested that humans should be restricted to their current territory. Kim didn't like that idea at all. "Sir," His aide entered the office. Message from Captain Lee's ship. Kim opened the message and read it twice. Then he read it a third time to make sure he understood it correctly. Captain Lee was reporting the discovery of ancient technology that could affect the quantum barrier. If this was true, it changed everything they knew about the galaxy. Kim immediately sent a message back to Lee. Continue your investigation. Send all data to Earth immediately. Tell no one else about this discovery. On the council station, Vexithara was meeting with other council members. The mood in the room was tense. The humans are becoming a problem, said Councillor Mordesh, an ancient being who had been on the council for over 1,000 years. They refuse to accept the natural limits of expansion. Perhaps we should contact them directly, suggested another council member. Explain the importance of staying within the barriers. Vexithara shook his head. I've studied human behavior. They don't respond well to being told what they cannot do. If anything, it makes them try harder. Then what do you suggest? Mordesh asked. We watch them carefully, Vexithara said, and we prepare for the possibility that they might do something no species has ever done before. Back on the planet, Park had made another discovery. Deep inside the tower, she found what looked like a control room. The walls were covered with displays showing star maps and energy readings. Captain, she called excitedly. You have to see this. Lee joined her in the control room. The displays were still active, showing parts of the galaxy he had never seen before. What am I looking at? He asked. Regions beyond the quantum barrier, Park said. Look at this. She pointed to one display that showed dozens of star systems. There are habitable worlds out there, lots of them. Lee stared at the display. If Park was right, there were entire regions of space that no one in the galaxy had access to. Regions that might contain resources, technology, or even other forms of life. Why would someone create a barrier to keep us away from all this? He wondered. Park was already working on that question. She had connected her equipment to the alien computers and was downloading as much information as possible. I'm not sure yet, she said, but I intend to find out. As the Perseverance prepared to leave the planet, Lee made a decision that would change the course of galactic history. Instead of reporting their discovery to the Council, as regulations required, he sent all the data directly to Earth. Humanity was about to learn that the limits they had accepted were not natural laws, but artificial barriers. And once humans learned that something was possible, nothing in the galaxy could stop them from trying to achieve it. The stage was set for a confrontation that would shake the foundations of galactic civilization. Dr. Park So-young had not slept in 3 days. The data from the alien ruins filled her computer screens, and each new discovery made her more excited and more worried at the same time. She was working in a secret laboratory deep underground on Earth, surrounded by the best scientists humanity could gather. Dr. Park, called Choi Min-ho as he entered the lab. The engineer looked as tired as she felt. I think I understand how the barrier works. Park looked up from her calculations. Show me. Choi pulled up a holographic display that showed the quantum barrier as a web of energy surrounding different parts of the galaxy. It's not one barrier, he explained. It's thousands of smaller barriers working together. Each one creates a frequency that blocks ships from entering higher dimensional space. Like a force field, Park said, understanding immediately. Exactly. But force fields can be disrupted if you know the right frequency. Choi smiled for the first time in days. And I think we do. Across the lab, Yoon Haiwan was studying samples from the dead planet. As the team's xenobiologist, she was trying to understand what had happened to the species that built the technology they found. Dr. Park, Yoon called. I have some bad news about our alien friends. Park and Choi walked over to Yoon's workstation. The biologist had been analyzing DNA samples from the ruins. They didn't die naturally, Yoon said. Every sample shows the same pattern. They all died at exactly the same time across their entire civilization. What could cause that? Park asked. I don't know, Yoon admitted. But whatever killed them, it was fast and it was complete. One day they were there, the next day they were gone. The news made Park uncomfortable, but she pushed the feeling aside. Right now, they needed to focus on the barrier technology. Captain Lee Taemin was back in space, leading a small fleet of research ships. Admiral Kim had given him permission to test the barrier disruption device that Choi had built. They were approaching a section of the quantum barrier that separated human space from an unexplored region. "All ships, prepare for the test," Lee announced over the radio. "Remember, if this doesn't work, we retreat immediately." Commander Shin Woo-jin, who was commanding one of the other ships, responded, "Understood, Captain. All systems ready." Shin was a military strategist who had been brought in to plan what would happen if they succeeded in breaking through the barrier. He had spent weeks studying star maps of the regions beyond, planning possible exploration and colonization routes. "Dr. Park," Lee called to his science officer, who was monitoring the barrier disruption device. "Are we ready?" Park checked her instruments one more time. "Device is charged and ready, Captain. Initiating barrier scan now." The scanner showed the barrier as a wall of swirling energy directly in front of them. Park's readings confirmed what Choi had predicted. The barrier was made up of overlapping frequency fields. "I have the frequency pattern," Park announced. "Configuring disruption device now." On the council station, alarms were ringing. Vexithara rushed to the monitoring station where technicians were tracking an unusual energy surge in human space. "What's happening?" the counselor demanded. "Unknown energy buildup near the quantum barrier," the technician reported. "The readings suggest the humans are trying to disrupt the barrier." Vexithara felt his blood turn cold. "That's impossible. No species has the technology to affect the barrier." "Apparently the humans do," the technician said quietly. Back at the barrier, Park activated the disruption device. Energy beams shot out from Lee's ship, hitting the barrier at precise points. For a moment nothing happened. Then the barrier began to flicker. "It's working," Park said excitedly. "The frequency disruption is causing instability in the barrier matrix." Lee watched as a hole began to form in the barrier. It started small but quickly grew larger. "All ships prepare to move through the opening." "Captain," Shin called from his ship. "Sensors are showing massive space on the other side. This region is huge." The 3 human ships flew through the gap in the barrier. What they found on the other side took their breath away. The region beyond the barrier contained dozens of star systems. Many had planets that could support human life, but most incredible of all were the artificial structures floating in space. Massive stations and platforms that had been built by unknown civilizations. "My God," Lee whispered. "How many species lived out here?" Park was scanning everything she could see. "Captain, these structures are ancient, but they're still functional. Some of them are the size of small moons. Behind them, the hole in the barrier was already starting to close. They had maybe an hour before they would need to return to their own space." "All ships begin detailed scans," Lee ordered. "We need to gather as much data as possible." On the council station, chaos had erupted. The barrier monitoring system was showing something that had never happened before: a successful breach of the quantum barrier. "Get me High Counselor Mordesh immediately," Vexthera ordered. Mordesh arrived within minutes. The ancient being looked at the readings and his expression became very grave. "How long since the breach occurred?" Mordesh asked. 15 minutes, Vexthera replied. "What do we do?" Mordesh was quiet for a long moment. "We prepare for war," he said finally. "If the humans can break through once, they can do it again. Other species will demand the same technology. The barriers have kept peace in the galaxy for millennia. Without them what?" Vexthera asked. "Chaos," Mordesh said simply. In the barrier region, the human ships were making amazing discoveries. One of the ancient space stations contained technology that was thousands of years ahead of anything in human space. Another had vast libraries of information about civilizations that no one in the galaxy remembered. "Captain," Park called excitedly, "I'm reading massive energy sources throughout this region. If we could establish bases here, humanity could advance by centuries in just a few years." Shin was thinking about the military implications. "Captain, this region could support dozens of human colonies. The strategic advantage would be enormous." Lee nodded, but something was bothering him. "Dr. Park, where are all the people who built these structures?" Park checked her readings again. "I'm not detecting any life signs anywhere in the region. All these civilizations seem to be extinct. Just like the species on the planet where we found the barrier technology," Lee said thoughtfully. "Captain," one of his crew members called out, "the barrier opening is closing. We need to leave now." Lee made a decision that would change everything, set course for the opening. "But we're coming back." And next time, we're bringing a full fleet. The 3 ships made it back through the barrier just as the opening sealed shut. They returned to human space carrying data that would revolutionize everything humans thought they knew about the galaxy. Admiral Kim received their report within hours. After reading it, he immediately called an emergency meeting of Earth's leadership. "Ladies and gentlemen," Kim announced to the assembled leaders, "we have discovered that the galaxy is much larger than we thought, and we now have the technology to access regions that have been hidden from us." The president of Earth looked at the data with amazement. "Admiral, what are you recommending?" "Full-scale exploration and colonization of the barrier regions," Kim said without hesitation. "If we can establish ourselves out there, humanity will become the most powerful species in the galaxy." "What about the Galactic Council?" the president asked. Kim's expression hardened. "The Council has been keeping us trapped in a small corner of space while vast regions full of resources and technology remained hidden. I think it's time we stopped asking their permission for everything." Within days, Earth began building a fleet specifically designed to break through and explore the barrier regions. The barrier disruption technology was installed on every ship, and plans were made for establishing permanent bases beyond the barriers. But the Council was making plans too. Emergency sessions were called as species that had never worked together began forming alliances. Some wanted to stop the humans before they could break any more barriers. Others wanted to ally with humanity to gain access to the barrier-breaking technology. The galaxy was about to discover that when humans decided something was possible, no force in the universe could convince them otherwise, and the ancient barriers that had kept the peace for so long were about to become the battlefield for the greatest conflict the galaxy had ever seen. Ambassador Kang Ye-jin had never seen the Galactic Council chambers in such chaos. As Earth's newest diplomatic representative, she had arrived expecting formal meetings and polite discussions. Instead, she found species screaming at each other in languages she didn't recognize. "Ambassador Kang," a voice called from behind her. She turned to see Counselor Vexithara approaching. The reptilian being looked exhausted. "We need to talk." Kang followed Vexithara to a private chamber away from the noise. "Counselor, what exactly is happening out there?" "Your species has broken something that was never meant to be broken," Vexithara said bluntly. "The quantum barriers have kept peace in this galaxy for over 1,000,000 years. Now half the Council wants to destroy Earth before you can break any more barriers." "And the other half?" Kang asked. "They want to ally with you to get the barrier-breaking technology for themselves," Vexithara replied. "Either way, war is coming." Back on Earth, Dr. Lim Jae-sung was leading teams at 7 different barrier sites. As the lead scientist for the Barrier Research Project, he had been given unlimited resources and the best minds humanity could provide. The results had been beyond anyone's wildest expectations. "Dr. Lim," his assistant called from across the command center, "Team 5 has successfully breached the U barrier at Site 7. They're reporting another massive region, filled with ancient technology." Lim looked at the star map showing all 7 barrier regions they had accessed. Each one contained dozens of habitable worlds and structures left behind by extinct civilizations. But something was bothering him about the pattern. "Have we found any signs of life in any of these regions?" he asked. "No, sir," his assistant replied. "Every region shows the same thing, advanced civilizations that suddenly vanished." Lim frowned. 7 different regions, dozens of different species all extinct. That's not a coincidence. Captain Lee Taemin was now commanding a fleet of 30 ships exploring the first barrier region they had discovered. They had established a temporary base on one of the ancient space stations and were beginning to understand the incredible technology they had found. "Captain," Dr. Park called from her laboratory on the station, "I think I know why all these civilizations are extinct." Lee joined her in the lab, where she had been studying data recovered from the alien computers. "What did you find?" "Records of something they called the Void Hunter," Park said, her voice worried. "According to these files, breaking through the barriers attracts the attention of beings from higher dimensions, beings that feed on advanced civilizations." Lee felt a chill run down his spine. "Are you saying that breaking the barriers is what killed all these species?" "That's exactly what I'm saying," Park replied. "Every civilization that figured out how to break the barriers was destroyed within years of their first breakthrough." Meanwhile, in the council chambers, High Counselor Mordesh was addressing the assembled representatives. The ancient being rarely spoke in council sessions. but the current crisis had forced him to reveal secrets that had been hidden for millennia. The quantum barriers were not built to limit your expansion, Mordesh said, his voice carrying across the silent chamber. They were built to protect you, to protect all of us. Ambassador Kang listened carefully as Mordesh continued. Long ago, before any of your civilizations existed, there were species that learned to travel between dimensions. They discovered that there are beings in higher dimensions that hunt advanced civilizations, beings that exist partially outside our reality. Why haven't you told us this before? Demanded the representative from the Altair system. Because we hoped you would never need to know, Mordesh replied. The barriers have kept these entities from noticing our galaxy for over 1 million years. But if the barriers are broken, they'll come here, Ambassador Kang finished, understanding the implications. On Earth, Admiral Kim was meeting with General Park Ji-hoon and the military leadership. The news from the barrier regions had changed everything they thought they knew about humanity's expansion. General, what's our defensive capability if we face an enemy from higher dimensions? Kim asked. General Park looked at the reports from Dr. Park's research. Unknown, sir. We don't even understand how these entities exist, let alone how to fight them. Then we need to find out quickly, Kim said, because according to these alien records, we have maybe a year before they notice us. In the 7th Barrier Region, Captain Oh Jin was leading a squadron of fighter ships investigating a massive structure that seemed to exist partially in normal space and partially in something else. As one of humanity's best pilots, she had volunteered for the most dangerous exploration missions. Control, I'm seeing something strange about this structure, Oh reported over the radio. It's like part of it isn't really there. Can you get closer? Came the reply from the command ship. Oh moved her fighter closer to the structure. As she approached, space around her began to change. Colors that had no names appeared around her ship, and she could see what looked like tears in reality itself. Control, I think this structure is some kind of dimensional gateway, she reported, and I think something is coming through. Back in the council chambers, the debate had become heated. Representatives from younger species were demanding access to barrier-breaking technology, while older civilizations insisted that the barriers must be restored immediately. The humans have doomed us all, shouted the representative from the Vega Coalition. We should destroy their worlds before these void hunters notice our galaxy. The humans are offering to share their technology, countered the Centauri ambassador. If we work together, maybe we can find a way to defend ourselves. Ambassador Kang stood to address the council. My people had no idea that breaking the barriers would put anyone in danger. But now that we know, we're prepared to work with the council to find a solution. There is no solution, Mordesh said sadly. Every species that has faced the void hunters has been completely destroyed. Their technology, their worlds, their very existence erased from reality. Dr. Nam Ki-young was Earth's leading archaeologist, studying the extinct civilizations in the barrier regions. His teams had found something that changed everything they thought they knew about the threat humanity had awakened. Dr. Lim, Nam called over the communication system. You need to see what we found in the Rigel barrier region. Lim connected to Nam's video feed and saw ruins that were different from anything they had discovered before. These weren't the remains of a civilization that had been destroyed. They were the remains of a civilization that had fought back. Look at these structures, Nam said, showing massive weapons platforms and defensive installations. This species knew the void hunters were coming and they prepared for war. Did they win? Lim asked. No, Nam replied, but they lasted longer than any of the others. And they left behind detailed records of how they fought. The archaeological discovery gave humanity its first hope. If one species had managed to fight the void hunters, maybe others could too. But it would require technology and cooperation on a scale never before seen in the galaxy. General Park Ji-hoon was already making plans. If we're going to fight beings from higher dimensions, we need weapons that can affect higher dimensional space. And we need them fast. Captain O's exploration of the dimensional gateway had yielded crucial information. The structure was indeed a portal used by the extinct civilization to monitor higher dimensional space. And something was definitely coming through. Control, I'm reading massive energy signatures from the other side of the gateway, O reported. Whatever these void hunters are, they're big, and they're moving this way. Admiral Kim received the report and immediately contacted the council. Counselor Vexthera, we need to talk. Now. The emergency meeting included representatives from both human and council military forces. Admiral Kim laid out the situation plainly. "We have maybe 6 months before the Void Hunters reach our galaxy," he said. "We can either work together to defend ourselves, or we can all die separately." Vexithara looked at the data from Captain O's exploration. "What are you proposing?" "A joint military effort," Kim replied. "Every species in the galaxy working together to build weapons and defenses against an enemy none of us understand. And if we refuse?" asked the Altair representative. "Then you'll face the Void Hunters alone," Kim said simply. "Because humanity isn't backing down from this fight." The council chamber fell silent as the representatives realized they had only 2 choices: unite with humanity against an impossible enemy, or watch as everything they had built over millions of years was destroyed. High Counselor Mordesh finally spoke. "The barriers were meant to keep us safe by keeping us hidden. But the humans have changed that forever. Now our only choice is to fight." Ambassador Kang felt the weight of history as the council prepared to vote on an alliance that would either save galactic civilization or lead to its complete destruction. Humanity had shattered the limits that kept the galaxy safe, and now everyone would have to live with the consequences. The galaxy was burning, 3 months after the council's vote to form a defense alliance. Half the member species had changed their minds and declared war on humanity instead. They believed that destroying the humans would somehow make the Void Hunters go away. General Park Ji-hoon stood on the bridge of the battleship Determination, watching enemy fleets approach the human colony in the Kepler Barrier region. The coalition against humanity included some of the galaxy's most powerful military forces, and they were determined to wipe out every human settlement beyond the old barriers. "General, enemy ships are entering weapons range," reported his tactical officer. "All ships defend the colony," Park ordered. "Do not let them through." The battle that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human ships equipped with barrier disruption technology fought against coalition forces that outnumbered them 3-1. But the humans had advantages their enemies didn't expect. "Sir, the enemy ships can't follow us into higher dimensional space," the tactical officer reported. "Our barrier technology gives us complete mobility advantage," Park smiled grimly. "Then let's use it. All ships, dimensional jump on my mark." The human fleet vanished from normal space and reappeared behind the enemy formation. The coalition forces found themselves caught between the human fleet and the defensive platforms. Protecting the colony, Captain Oh Soo-jin was leading a squadron of fighters, equipped with experimental dimensional weapons. As she dove toward an enemy battleship, she activated the new technology that Dr. Seo Min-ji's team had developed. "Dimensional torpedoes away," Oh announced as her weapons phased partially out of reality before striking the enemy ship. The battleship's shields were useless against weapons that attacked from higher dimensions. But the coalition forces had their own surprises. As O's squadron regrouped for another attack, enemy ships emerged from hyperspace carrying technology that none of the human forces recognized. "Control, enemy ships are using some kind of reality disruption weapon," O reported as space around her fighter began to warp and twist. "I can't maintain formation." Back on Earth, Dr. Nam Ki-young had made a discovery that changed everything. While studying ruins in the 7th Barrier region, his team had found something that shouldn't exist: recent construction. "Dr. Lim," Nam called urgently over the communication system, "we found evidence that the Void Hunters aren't just coming. They're already here." Lim connected to Nam's location and saw structures that were clearly not built by any known civilization. They seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once, shifting and changing as he watched. "How long have these been here?" Lim asked. "Based on the surrounding evidence, maybe 50 years, Nam replied. "They've been watching us, learning about us." The news was transmitted immediately to the Council and to human military command. The revelation that the Void Hunters had already been observing the galaxy for decades changed the entire nature of the conflict. High Counselor Mordesh called an emergency session of the Council, including representatives from both sides of the Galactic War. "The enemy is already among us," Mordesh announced. "Fighting each other serves only their purpose." But the coalition forces were too committed to their course. "The humans brought this threat down on all of us," declared the representative from the Vega coalition. "Destroying them is still our only hope." Ambassador Kang stood to respond. "Destroying humanity won't make the Void Hunters go away. It will just make them stronger. Her words proved prophetic when the first direct attack by the Void Hunters occurred during a major battle between human and coalition forces near the Rigel Barrier region. Captain Ryuteho was commanding a human cruiser in the middle of the firefight when space itself began to tear open around the fighting fleets. All ships, massive dimensional disturbance detected, Ryu announced over the fleet communication channel. Something big is coming through. What emerged from the tears in space defied description. The Void Hunters were beings that existed partially in normal space and partially in dimensions that human minds couldn't comprehend. They were vast shifting entities that seemed to feed on the energy released by the ongoing battle. "My God," whispered Dr. Park So-young, who was observing from a research vessel. "They're not just hunting advanced civilizations. They're feeding on conflict itself." The arrival of the Void Hunters immediately changed the nature of the battle. Both human and coalition forces found their weapons completely ineffective against enemies that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. "All ships, retreat immediately," General Park ordered. "Conventional weapons are useless, but the Void Hunters were faster than any ship in the galaxy." As the fleets tried to escape, the entities began consuming entire vessels, absorbing both the ships and their crews into whatever dimension they came from. Captain O watched in horror as a coalition battleship simply vanished after being touched by one of the creatures. "Control, they're not destroying the ships. They're taking them somewhere." Dr. Nam's archaeological team made another crucial discovery as the battle raged. Deep in the ruins of the civilization that had fought the Void Hunters, they found records of the entity's true nature. "They're not from higher dimensions," Nam reported excitedly. "They're from a parallel galaxy that was completely consumed. They're refugees who became predators." The information changed everything the galaxy thought it knew about the threat. The Void Hunters weren't interdimensional beings. They were the last survivors of their own galaxy who had learned to exist between dimensions to escape their own destruction. "But what destroyed their galaxy?" Dr. Lim asked. Nam's answer chilled everyone who heard it. "According to these records, they destroyed it themselves. They consumed every civilization, every planet, every star in their own galaxy. Now they're trying to do the same to ours." Admiral Kim received the archaeological report as he watched the battle reports coming in from across the galaxy. Void Hunter attacks were occurring simultaneously at multiple barrier regions, and every conventional weapon the galaxy possessed was proving useless. "Get me a channel to all fleet commanders," Kim ordered. "Emergency meeting in 1 hour." The meeting included human officers, coalition commanders, and council military leaders. For the first time since the war began, both sides were working together. "Ladies, gentlemen, and other beings," Kim began, "we are facing an enemy that our ancestors spent 1,000,000 years hiding from. Conventional warfare isn't going to work." General Park displayed tactical data from the battles. "The Void Hunters exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. To fight them, we need weapons that can affect multiple dimensions at once. Do we have such weapons?" asked Admiral Kethavar of the Altair Defense Force. Dr. C.O. Minji, who had been working on dimensional weapon technology, spoke up. "We have prototypes, but they're untested against real targets." Captain Ryu, who had survived the first Void Hunter attack, had an idea. "What if we don't try to fight them directly? What if we try to send them back where they came from?" "Explain," Kim said. "The archaeological data shows they escaped their own galaxy by hiding between dimensions," Ryu said. "If we could collapse the dimensional barriers around them, we might be able to trap them back in their dead galaxy." Dr. Park looked at the proposal with growing excitement. "It could work, but it would require coordinating dimensional weapons across multiple star systems simultaneously." "How many ships would we need?" asked General Park. "Every ship in the galaxy," Dr. C.O. replied. "Human, coalition, Council Defense Forces, everyone working together." The room fell silent as the representatives realized what was being proposed. They would have to end the Galactic War immediately, and unite every military force in known space for a single, coordinated attack against an enemy that had already consumed an entire galaxy. Counselor Vexathera spoke for the coalition forces. "If we do this and fail, there won't be a second chance." Ambassador Kang spoke for humanity. "If we don't do this, there won't be a galaxy left to save." High Counselor Mordesh made the final decision. "Contact every species, every government, every military force in the galaxy. Tell them the old wars are over. We fight as one. or we die as separate species. As the meeting ended, Captain O received new orders that would have been impossible just hours earlier. She was being assigned to lead a mixed squadron of human, coalition, and council ships in the largest military operation in galactic history. The plan was ambitious beyond anything ever attempted. Every ship in the galaxy would attack the Void Hunters simultaneously, using dimensional weapons to collapse the barriers that allowed the entities to exist between dimensions. But as the fleets prepared for the final battle, Dr. Nam made one more discovery in the alien ruins. The civilization that had fought the Void Hunters had tried the same plan, and they had failed. Dr. Park So-young stared at the archaeological data that Dr. Nam had sent from the ruins. The ancient civilization had tried to trap the Void Hunters by collapsing dimensional barriers, just like the plan the galaxy was preparing to execute. But they had failed, and their entire species had been consumed. There has to be something we're missing, Park muttered to herself as she studied the alien records for the 100th time. Dr. Seo Minji entered the laboratory carrying a cup of coffee and looking as exhausted as Park felt. The Dimensional Weapons Project had been running non-stop for weeks, preparing equipment for every ship in the galaxy. Any new ideas about why the ancient plan failed? Seo asked, settling into a chair beside Park. Look at this, Park said, pointing to a section of the alien data. They tried to collapse the dimensional barriers, but the Void Hunters adapted. They learned to exist in even higher dimensions. SEO studied the data carefully. So if we try the same plan, we'll just teach them to hide in dimensions we can't even detect, Park finished. We need a completely different approach. Fleet Admiral Bae Hyun-woo was coordinating the largest military operation in galactic history from his flagship, the Indomitable. Ships from hundreds of species were gathering at staging points throughout the galaxy, all preparing for a coordinated strike against the Void Hunters. Admiral, his communications officer reported, we're receiving a priority message from Dr. Park on Earth. Bae opened the communication channel to find Park looking more excited than he had ever seen her. Admiral, we need to change the plan, Park said immediately. The dimensional collapse strategy won't work, but I think we have something that will. Explain quickly, Doctor. We launched the attack in 6 hours. Instead of trying to trap the Void Hunters in collapsed dimensions, we're going to give them exactly what they want, Park said. But not in the way they expect, Bae frowned. Doctor, I need more than riddles. Park's image was replaced by a technical schematic that made Bae's head hurt just looking at it. The Void Hunters feed on energy from advanced civilizations. But what if we could create an artificial civilization that generates more energy than they could ever consume? You're talking about a trap, Bae realized. Exactly. We build a dimensional construct that looks like the most advanced civilization they've ever encountered. When they try to feed on it, the construct will absorb them instead. Dr. Seo appeared on the screen beside Park. It's based on the barrier technology, but reversed. Instead of keeping things out, it pulls things in. Bae looked at the schematic again. How long to build this construct? It's already built, Park said with a smile. We just need to activate it. Captain Ryu Tai-ho was leading the first wave of attack ships toward a major Void Hunter concentration near the Vega system. His ship had been equipped with the prototype dimensional weapon that was supposed to collapse the barriers around the entities. All ships, prepare for dimensional weapon activation, Ryu announced to his squadron. But before he could give the firing order, a new set of instructions came through from Fleet Command. All units, abort dimensional collapse attack. Admiral Bae's voice came over the communication system. New mission parameters incoming. Ryu read the new orders with amazement. Instead of attacking the Void Hunters directly, they were going to lead them into a trap. Captain Oh Soo-jin was commanding a squadron of fighters equipped with special beacon technology. Her job was to get close enough to the Void Hunters to plant the beacons that would guide them toward the trap. Remember, Oh told her pilots, we don't engage the targets. We just mark them and get out. Flying close to the Void Hunters was terrifying. The entities existed partially in normal space and partially in dimensions that human eyes couldn't see properly. Looking at them too long made Oh feel dizzy and sick. Beacon 1 deployed, reported her wingman as he dropped the first guidance device near a massive Void Hunter. Good work, Oh replied. Moving to target 2. Back on Earth, Dr. Park was monitoring the trap activation from the command center. The dimensional construct was hidden in a region of space that appeared to contain the ruins of an incredibly advanced civilization. Construct. Is online and broadcasting, reported Dr. Lim. From his monitoring station, energy signature is stronger than anything we've ever detected. Will the Void Hunters take the bait? Asked Admiral Kim, who was observing the operation. They'll have to, Park replied. The construct is generating more energy than the rest of the galaxy combined. To them, it will look like the ultimate prize. The plan was working better than anyone had hoped. Void Hunters from across the galaxy began moving toward the construct's location, drawn by the massive energy signature it was broadcasting. High Counselor Mordesh was monitoring the operation from the council station. Dr. Park, what happens when all the Void Hunters reach the construct? The construct will absorb them into a pocket dimension where they can't affect our reality, Park explained. They'll be trapped in a space that contains unlimited energy, so they'll never be hungry again. And they'll never need to hunt other civilizations, Ambassador Kang added, understanding the elegant solution. Captain Ryu's fleet was escorting a group of Void Hunters toward the trap, when one of the entities suddenly stopped moving. Control, target has halted, Ryu reported. It seems to be scanning the area. Dr. Park's voice came over the communication system. The entity is probably trying to understand why there's so much energy in one location. Keep the beacons active. We need them to investigate personally. The Void Hunter moved slowly toward the construct, and Ryu could see more entities converging from other directions. Hundreds of the creatures were approaching the trap. Control, multiple targets are gathering at the construct location, Ryu reported. Understood, came the reply. Maintain safe distance and prepare for construct activation. Dr. Seo was at the activation controls for the dimensional trap. All personnel, the construct is surrounded by Void Hunter entities. Activating trap in 10 seconds. The countdown seemed to last forever. Park watched on her screens as hundreds of Void Hunters surrounded the construct, trying to figure out how to feed on the massive energy source. Activation in 3, 2, 1, now. The construct suddenly expanded, creating a dimensional portal that pulled the Void Hunters into a pocket universe designed specifically for them. One by one, the entities vanished into the trap. It's working, Park said excitedly. The construct is absorbing them. But then something unexpected happened. Instead of being trapped, the largest Void Hunter began to fight back, using its own dimensional abilities to resist the pull of the construct. The entity is adapting, Dr. Seo reported with concern. It's learning to counter the trap. Admiral Bay made a command decision. All ships, maximum power to the construct. We need to overwhelm its defenses. Captain O led her squadron in a dangerous maneuver, flying directly into the dimensional disturbance around the construct to plant additional power sources. Oh, that's too dangerous, Ryu called over the radio. Someone has to do it, O replied as her fighter dove into the swirling energy field around the trap. The additional power sources worked. The construct's pull became irresistible, and even the largest Void Hunter was drawn into the pocket dimension. All targets absorbed, Dr. Lim reported. The trap is sealed. Across the galaxy, monitoring stations reported the same thing. The Void Hunters were gone, trapped in a dimension where they had unlimited energy to feed on and no way to affect the normal universe. Fleet Admiral Bay addressed the combined fleets of the galaxy. Ladies, gentlemen, and beings of all species, the threat is over. The Void Hunters have been contained. The celebration that followed could be heard across the galaxy. Species that had been at war just days before were now working together to rebuild what had been damaged during the crisis. But the most important change was in the Galactic Council itself. The old barriers that had kept species separated were permanently removed, replaced with monitoring stations that could detect threats from higher dimensions. Dr. Park found herself appointed as the galaxy's first director of dimensional research, responsible for monitoring the trap and developing defenses against any future threats. Captain Lee, who had started the whole adventure by discovering the ancient ruins, was given command of the first interdimensional exploration fleet. His mission was to explore the higher dimensions safely, making sure that nothing like the Void Hunters could ever threaten the galaxy again. 5 years later, Ambassador Kang stood before the rebuilt Galactic Council as humanity was formally inducted as a full-member species. The barriers that had once limited human expansion were now replaced with cooperative exploration agreements. The humans have taught us something important, High Counselor Mordesh said during the ceremony. Sometimes the greatest dangers come not from pushing boundaries, but from accepting limitations without question. Captain O, now an admiral herself, commanded the interdimensional monitoring fleet that kept watch for new threats. The galaxy had learned that the universe was far larger and more dangerous than they had ever imagined, but also that cooperation could overcome any challenge. Dr. Park made her final log entry on the Void Hunter project. Thanks for you.